This is not just like the film industry, even though I feel like the film industry is kind of plagued by it, but I feel like you lose a lot of unique inspiration and also just in general like seeing new faces and new like cultural backgrounds and how that influences like their storytelling. All of the filmmakers that we have in our program, they're either a person of color or they're a woman, which I think is really unique.
Christine, how are you?
I'm so well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. I'm excited. Today, we are here to talk about The Other Lens, your short film program you've created to elevate emerging filmmakers and marginalized voices, taking place on November 6th. I'm going to put all the films featured here on the screen. I had
Okay.
the pleasure of learning more about them, the filmmakers, and even being able to watch those films. So, thank you for
Yay.
reaching out and sharing your program with me.
Of course, of course.
From your experience curating The Other Lens, what do we lose as a culture when the same demographic tells most of our stories?
I feel like, and this is not just like the film industry, even though I feel like the film industry is kind of plagued by it, but I feel like you lose a lot of unique inspiration and also just in general like seeing new faces and new like cultural backgrounds and how that influences like their storytelling. Like for example, all of the filmmakers that we have in our program, they're either a person of color or they're a woman, which I think is really unique. I feel like it's very unusual to not have like predominantly men, and ours is predominantly women. And there's like more representation in terms of not just the traditional like white male that is typically seen driving the film industry. And what I loved so much about curating the program was we very much had it very plainly like this is a program that's meant for underrepresented voices, and the submissions really showed up like every single submission had something truly unique or came from a filmmaker from a background that doesn't really get a spotlight as much. And I was really happy to like watch all these different stories because it's not like these people don't make films, they just don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Completely, completely. What wasn't happening in the existing film ecosystem that made The Other Lens necessary to you?
I feel like, and this comes from my experience from also like submitting to film festivals, I feel like film festivals, if they're not like super indie or super local, they're really prioritizing like making money or getting certain kinds of faces or names within their festival. And I have like my own feelings about it. I just feel like it's really just pushing forward the same faces, same stories. And there's not really much in terms of like really helping out the filmmaker. Yes, they're getting a screening in what would be considered like a prestigious festival, but then after that, there's nothing really done to platform them or like give them more tools that they need. So with this program, it was really emphasized that we're going to get prizes for our filmmakers. You know, it's not going to be just a film screening. It's going to be, if you won the Best Actor award, you're getting an intensive to continue pursuing your acting. You know, if you got a Best Director, you were getting an annual membership on how to improve like your directing skills, your filmmaking skills. So what I loved about what we did with The Other Lens is that it was truly like emphasizing and platforming the filmmaker as a person and elevating their experience to make it more than just a screening. It's like a celebration.
I love that you said that. I feel like now there's such a uplifting marginalized voices is something that's kind of like a hot topic, but after that initial screening you don't see much happening for that artist. So I really love that you guys are like elevating them and their skill set. That is amazing.
Yeah. Another
What
thing,
made,
sorry, just
no,
to
no,
even
please.
add on, like another
Yeah.
thing that I was really proud that we did was, you know, we selected 5 films, but there were so many beautiful films that we even had honorable mentions. And even with that, like with the honorable mentions, we reached out to them and we were like, hey, we still want to promote your film. Like, unfortunately, it's not making the screening, but it doesn't just end here. Like, we still love your film enough to like promote it.
That is beautiful. beautiful. Oh my goodness. And what makes a film right for the other lens?
I don't think there's necessarily like a right. I think it was basically embracing everybody's unique perspective. And I think the kind of films that we were really like paying attention to in terms of like, this feels like a really good film that people need to see is basically like having a story that was well put together and coming from a perspective that, you know, doesn't really get the opportunity to shine, or was saying something that isn't typically said in terms of storytelling, or something unique in terms of the filmmaking. Like, for example, there's a film that we're going to show and it's edited completely in the double perspective of like night and day, which I thought was so cool. You don't really get like editing techniques like that in filmmaking, or just in general, like quirky stories or stories about grief, you know, being trans. Like, in general, I felt like it was a really good variety of telling different stories from different perspectives.
Is there a specific film or filmmakers in the program who are doing things formally or narratively that wouldn't really happen in a conventional filmmaking space?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like if you're talking about like what they're all doing, I would say all of them are really pushing boundaries, which is really impressive. I especially commend the filmmakers who are not in like the States and are from other countries where like resources may be a little bit more scarce, or it's not as much of a field that is explored. Obviously in the States, like we have Hollywood, we have a lot of money. But it was really beautiful to see, you know, people from Iran, people from Japan, people from Taiwan that are making these incredible films, and they're doing it probably even better than some of the people in America, and they deserve like that kind of recognition, because in where they're from, like this is truly like a standout piece, and I'm happy that we were able to get them to submit, because getting people to submit from a different state is hard, let alone another country, and then some of them flying in to even attend the screening is like just makes us so happy.
Yes. How did you promote it? Like where did you publish for people to know like I should submit here?
So we did it on Film Freeway. It's like the basic platform that you can showcase your film festival. But what I think really spoke to people was like how we described the program. Like, this is for people who are having stories about connection, representation, immigration, like very niche topics. And it wasn't focused too much about like where you were from or who you were. It was like, what story are you trying to tell? And it's funny because even though we didn't like make it to a specific type of person, like it had to be all female or all from like people of color, it was predominantly people who were underrepresented telling these stories, which I found so impressive.
The Project Feel mission links storytelling to empathy and meaningful social change. What does the relationship between watching these films and creating real world impact look like to you?
I think it starts with always promoting your community as much as possible, and like really offering them the support that not only would they appreciate but that they're asking for. I feel like, you know, being an indie filmmaker too, being a creative in a place that's so saturated, like it's really good to be there with them and share this experience with them and know that like there's an opportunity with us and we want to help you in the best way possible. So we've always prioritized like community first, and that speaks in like in all the digital campaigns we've done, every single event. You know, like it's really hard being a creative industry, in the creative industry. Like it's even more difficult to be a business and like to even make it to the point of like profit, but like we've never prioritized profit. It's always been like community first, and that's where the fulfillment comes from. And it's really nice to like engage with the community hands on, so that we are like basically showing them like we're here with you, we're here to support you, and we want to showcase the talent that you have, and then we continue building the community from there.
Project Feel mentions challenging ingrained norms, whether ethnic, racial, sexual, or otherwise. How do you honor the complexity of these intersectional identities?
I think it's with seeking to work with and finding creatives that match that. Like something that I love so much about Project Feel is, we all come from Latino backgrounds, right? So already like coming from people of color, and then really seeking out to work with artists that don't necessarily get the spotlight, and like putting together full on shows and screenings that mean that we're going to show faces and stories that don't typically get that. And what I love so much about that mission is because it sounds like it would be difficult, but it's actually so easy because there's so many artists that are like waiting for their turn. And it's been really really special to like find different communities to like showcase all these different communities that everyone can be that can resonate with. Like it just because you're not from like a certain background, or you're not a man or you're not a woman, whatever it is that you can fit into that's a certain community, that doesn't mean you can't resonate with like what story they're trying to tell. And so it's been really nice to like bring all those different communities together.
Completely. Do you think the industry keeps marginalized filmmakers in a perpetual state of the emerging status?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the production company, or like who's backing what. Like if you look at indie production companies like A24 and Neon, I think they're doing a really great job in putting the filmmaker first. Now, granted, I noticed that they're making more films, and the films that they're putting more money behind are the stereotypical men that you would typically see. But I think if you compare it to other studios, they are doing a better job of getting more unique stories out there told by filmmakers that are more indie. So do I think that they're purposefully doing it? Honestly, to an extent. And I feel like it's because the industry is controlled by money, and the people at the top who have the most money are typically white men. And right now, like that's unfortunate, but I think if we continue having more indie production companies come up and kind of burst through those barriers, and kind of just continue to tell stories despite of the lack of funding from like major studios or the recognition, I think it'll be a nice turn to see filmmakers not always strive to be the Hollywood success story, and rather finding success out of that and seeing where you fit within communities that are watching your stories and are there for you, if that makes sense.
In your opinion, at what point does a filmmaker graduate from emerging to established?
Honestly, I feel like that's subjective. And I feel like that's subjective to the filmmaker, actually. I've also thought about this as someone who is making films now, that, like, to me, if I never made a feature, or if I never, like, did X amount of films, I would still feel satisfied in however many and whatever kind of films I did make. But I do know that that's not everybody's point of view in terms of what they deem as like having success. And I feel like if we're putting everybody's perspective in mind, I feel like you would be considered established when you have like a returning audience member. And that can be a handful, that can be thousands, that could be millions. But I feel like when you are able to establish your kind of style, in terms of like the way you tell stories or what stories you're telling, and people are coming back to see what you're creating, I feel like that's enough. And that could be on like the widest scale of like your community of 100 versus like moviegoers going to see your film in like the cinema.
Do you think there are other voices still missing from the other lens?
Ooh, I mean, there were so many films, and I feel like Of course, like obviously if we could have every kind of voice, like that would be optimal. I feel like we did end up getting a stop motion film in, and I really wanted to have some sort of like animated story in there because I think that, to make an animated film is already so tough.
Totally.
And so we have another honorable mention that's animated, and I'm so happy that we get to share that one too. So other than like styles, in terms of like the filmmakers themselves, I really felt like we had a range, maybe like a more youthful voice. Would have been cool to get more like the maybe not like too young, like of a teenager, but maybe like 18 to 21, like a really young, youthful perspective. Most of our submissions were like, mid 20s to like and up. But it would have been cool to compare it to a more young voice that's like not necessarily trying to fit into an algorithm or jaded by the industry yet, and kind of just making something fresh.
The name The Other Lens, can you walk me through how you came up with this name?
Yes, this is so funny because we always have a part of our meeting where we're like, okay, we got the idea down, and so like, what are we gonna call it? So basically, the theme came from the whole idea of embracing otherness. And it's funny because like, what is otherness? It's essentially anything other than you, and that can mean so many different things. It's more so like taking yourself out of the center and embracing everybody else as like the same as you, as opposed to something unlike you, and kind of like comparing it to yourself. And so when we decided to go with like, well, empathizing and like identifying that everybody has their own otherness, we really liked the word other. And so how do we kind of put a play on it in terms of centering it around themes? And there's always the other perspective, but then if you think about like how they use their voice, it's through the other lens, right? Like how they say their perspective, how they say their story, and it's through all these different lenses, literally and figuratively. And I thought that was like a clever way of like summarizing how we're trying to shift focus so that we're looking from all angles, and how everybody is thinking of telling stories.
I picked up on that. That's exactly how I interpreted it. So, yeah, you
Well, I'm
guys hit the
happy you
nail on the
got
head.
it. Okay, good. I'm happy it wasn't too abstract.
No, no, it was great. It was perfect.
Okay,
How
cool.
are you thinking about getting the other lens in front of the people who need their perspectives challenged the most?
Ooh, I think by direct invite. Honestly, I feel like if you think about the people who typically follow us, we got creatives, we get people around the same age range, New York based, and it's people kind of like us. But I think if we're trying to engage with more people that should try and like maybe tap into other communities and not always just follow mainstream, I think it's not something that they would necessarily want to do voluntarily, because that there's a reason why they're not really engaging with it. And I think by, yeah, direct invite, kind of like showing them that there's other ways to, like consume stories, build communities, and yeah, just extending the hand, like making the community bigger, and, expanding their mind perspectives, and hopefully that changes their mind and gets them more in tune with like how to support other people.
And what would you like audiences to know about Project Feel and the other lens that we didn't touch on?
Ooh, I just feel like Project Feel is really first and foremost a community that prioritizes artists first. And I think that means any kind of form of creativity, any kind of creative. And I feel like if you have an idea and you're passionate about it, like we want to hear it. We want to work with you. We want to help you. And, like whatever comes of it is like good enough. I think that's what we're really trying to champion, that like the whole point is to create. It's not necessarily like a means to an end. And then with the other lens, I would say something similar in the sense like the other lens is for everyone. And it's for everyone who appreciates film and wants to see new stories, and also an opportunity to speak directly with filmmakers. I feel like a lot of times that we watch films or we go to festivals, like the guests or the audience to filmmaker is not really something that's offered. That they're kind of like segregated in a way where it's like exclusive, and this is meant to be like a space that's shared and intended to build connections with the people who make the films, but also the people who also love films and want to continue appreciating art together. So all about community. Like the other lens is focused on community, and Project Feel is focused on community.
And where can the people find you? And
Me
Project Feel.
specifically? Oh, okay.
I mean, anybody.
So Project Feel is found on Instagram at project.feel. You could also go to our website at projectfeel.com. If you want to find me, you'll definitely see me on the Project Feel Instagram. But if you want my actual handle, it's christine.com with an underscore.
I'm elisa.com with 2 underscores. Stop. I've never met another .com.
No, you know what's funny? I don't think I have either, but I've met a lot of like .jpegs, .wav, like all the other
Oh,
dots. Yeah,
that's so funny.
all the other file types.
We're the
Unfortunately,
whole internet.
yeah, we're the whole web page.
Christine, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking to me all about Project Feel and the other lens. This has been amazing, and I'm very excited. I will be there November 6th.
Yay! I was gonna
Yeah.
ask you. I hope you're there so we can meet in
I
person.
know. Yeah, I would love to meet in person.
Yay! Well, I'm so excited that you're coming. I'm excited to see you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This was so
Oh my
nice.
God. My pleasure. My pleasure. Have a good
Awesome.
one.
Thank you. You too.